Hello. Good. I was starting to think whether or not we were live or not. There are at least 4 people here. It's the first time I'm using OBS, which is a live streaming piece of software. So I'm not really sure what I'm doing, to be honest. But it's great to have some people here. Just gonna. I should probably stop playing. I just need to adjust. There's a box here with your questions in it, your chat in it. Just making it bigger so I can read it properly. Okay, that's better. Yeah. So how is everyone? It's 8:30 here at night in the UK. Okay, looks like we've got a question already from David. He says, I'm not a singer and I want to compose pop songs. How would you do it? Singer who wants to compose songs. When you say you're a singer, I imagine you do sing, but you just don't think you have a very good voice. And there are people who have written songs who don't have good voices. So just get to a point where you're happy to show your songs to other people using your own voice, and then they can sing them for you. I'm a songwriter and I don't particularly think I have a good voice, but it hasn't particularly stopped me from writing songs. What else have we got? You should do a video on Van Halen. I should do a video on Van Halen. Do you teach music? I do teach music, Victor, but less so now. I used to teach about 15 private lessons a week. Now probably down to about 1, just because nowadays I'm focusing more time on doing YouTube. You should never probably stop playing. Okay, I'll keep playing. 9:30 a.m. in New Zealand. Oh, cool. So you're in tomorrow. What are some of your favourite chords? Well, I'm actually playing 2 of them right now. What I'm doing here is D minor 9 going to G11. It's very sort of, I don't know, for lack of a better word, vibey. But it places you in a Dorian sort of sound, that cool Dorian sound. Amelia asks, are you happy with what you're doing? I am happy with what I'm doing. Very happy. I feel very lucky. And I found that when I'm choosing what I'm doing with my life recently, it's been kind of choosing between 2 good options, which is something I'm very lucky to have. Very, very chuffed to be doing what I'm doing. 2-5. Daniel Wood says 2-5. This could be a 2-5. I'm thinking of it as a 1-4 because I'm a Dorian, but I could quickly turn it into a 2-5 if I went down to C there. So now it's a 2-5-1. What other questions have we got? Levi asks how to get independency from both hands. I remember when I first started playing that my left hand was like a slave to my right hand. I couldn't play something in my left hand without the right hand doing it as well. And I think what you have to just do is practice 2 hands independently as much as you can, to the point you can do what I'm doing now, where you are just sort of able to talk and think about other things, and then get used to combining them. So I actually now, rather than thinking of the right hand leading, I think now of the left hand leading, like a bass line, and then the chords are like laid on top of the bass line. By the way, let me know if the sound is too quiet, too loud, distorted, whatever, because I've got a whole new setup, so I'm not really sure how it sounds. Are you into modal jazz? Asks DJ Hyder. Kind of Blue, which is obviously the modal jazz album by Miles Davis, is one of my favourite jazz records. I'm already kind of playing modal jazz because I'm just mucking around in D Dorian. What else we got? Do you know any places where I could learn music theory for free? Asks Miguel. YouTube, basically, and also Wikipedia. Wikipedia is a good source. I remember in my theory lessons at university years ago, sometimes they'd be covering stuff I was already quite familiar with, so I would actually sit in class reading Wikipedia and going into the slightly more advanced stuff. Obviously you have to always take Wikipedia with a little bit of a pinch of salt because it's written just by everyday people, but it's usually a fantastic source of information. The piano's low. Is the piano? Jacob Smith, is the piano low in the mix when I'm playing with both hands, or just when I'm like doodling in the left hand? Peter Pro, my favourite Wings album is Band on the Run, which I think is excellent. I think Band on the Run, more or less, is the best thing Paul McCartney's done since the Beatles. I think so. He's done some other good stuff, but it's the best. It's the time he came the nearest to the Beatles' work. Play Freebird. I wish I knew how to play that. Favourite Coldplay song? Asks Reza. Favourite Coldplay song? I do actually have a sweet spot for Coldplay. I know a lot of people aren't as fond of Coldplay, but particularly the earlier stuff I do actually quite like. Favourite song by them though? I don't know. I quite like the song Strawberry Swing, which is from Viva La Vida. It's a good song. Dude, stop talking. Oh, I'm afraid it's a live chat. That's what I'm doing. EV says, does YouTube pay you or do you pay YouTube? It's kind of both. On videos, they show adverts, right? About 50% of the money from those ads goes to YouTube. The other 50% goes to me, unless I'm unlucky enough to get a copyright strike, and then that complicates the whole thing. So in a way, ads on my videos are earning money for YouTube, but also thanks to YouTube's global reach, they're putting profitable ads on my videos. So it's kind of like a symbiotic relationship. They make money from me, I make money from them, that sort of thing. Andrew Brend says, collab with Adam Neely. I'd love to. We did a sort of collab before. I don't know if you remember the video we did where it was children's songs, but with different sort of technical music theory concepts applied to them. So I did Farah Jacka in 7/4 time, and that was on Adam's channel, but that was with 9 other YouTubers as well. But yeah, I'd love to collab with him at some point if the opportunity arose. Producer Jay Jones says, what's your favourite Elton John song? Tiny Dancer. Tiny Dancer is amazing. Tyler Hackner, best keyboard, Fender Rhodes or Wurlitzer? I'm actually playing a Wurlitzer sound right now. I love both of those sounds. I think I actually, deep down, prefer E-piano than true acoustic piano. But Fender Rhodes, switch to a Fender Rhodes sound now. Similar sound, isn't it? But it's a bit thicker. Whereas the Wurlitzer is kind of a bit more, I don't know how to describe it. Delicate, feathery. Lucas asks, should I learn pieces if I want to improvise? Not necessarily. You could just learn how to improvise. But the advantage to learning pieces is that you kind of, every time you learn a piece, you sort of, your brain will pick up little elements from it, little licks and bits and pieces, and then you'll naturally wind up applying it to your improvisation. So, for example, in my recent video on 251s, I did an improv at the end where I went through every key using a 251, and I accidentally, I don't think anyone's actually spotted this, I accidentally played a bit of New York State of Mind by Billy Joel in there, because that song's 251s, And I wasn't meaning to do it, but because I'd learnt that a few years ago, it was just at the back of my mind, and it just naturally came out on the keyboard. But yeah, I'm not sure if that's a good or a bad thing, to be honest, but there's no problem with learning pieces, even if you want to improvise. Creepy09 asks, favourite David Bowie song? Man Who Sold the World, probably, but that's a very difficult one to answer. Yeah, Man Who Sold the World. What else we got? How can I learn to improvise on piano? Asks Nora. Really, I would say the best way to learn to improvise is start with a scale. Perhaps on the piano, you could go with the A minor scale, A natural minor, which do white notes, which makes it easier. And then get a simple chord progression. Perhaps if I did it up here, A minor, F, C, G, and I could just loop that round, and then with my right hand just doodle around in the scale, and over time you'll get used to what sounds good, what sounds bad, how to make it sound more melodic and intentional. The reason you need a scale, really, to improvise, at least when you start, is... oh, thank you, Bob. I just saw that you did a super chat. Thank you so much for that. That's really kind of you. Why you need a scale when improvising, really, is because improvising is effectively composing in real time, instantly. And a good way of knowing that the notes that you're going to put together will sound good is pulling them from a scale that you already know, because you know the notes of that scale will work together and give you a certain sound. Ein Niemand asks, favourite Phoebe Bridgers song? Very difficult decision. I was actually thinking about this the other day, if I could only listen to one Phoebe Bridgers song, what it would be. My answer used to be Motion Sickness. I think now it would be I Know the End. But, it would be a tragedy to write off either of those songs. There's a C minor 7 chord for Jesse VD. Do it up there. It's not a bit muddy down there. Do it there instead. Nora says that was very helpful. Thank you. What's your favourite Arctic Monkeys song? Asks Paul. I don't know. I used to be really into Arctic Monkeys when I was younger. I was a massive fan of their first 2 albums, and then the 3rd album and the 4th album I went off, and then, like everybody, I came back for AM. Brainstorm, maybe. I'd have to revisit them. I also like Mardy Bum. That's pretty good. What's your favourite song in 6/8? Asks Teresa. That's difficult. I love 6/8. I remember when I first started playing music and I didn't know what time signatures were yet. I discovered 6/8 and thought, this sounds good. This is the sort of music I like. Off the top of my head, I'm actually checking if it's in 6/8 as I look in my head. Yeah, Subterranean Homesick Alien, Radiohead. I didn't actually know if it was in 6/8, but I kind of had a feeling it was, and when I sang it in my head, I got it. Oh, thank you, Evie, so much for that generous tip of yours. Thank you so much. It's really appreciated. It's so nice to have everyone here. This is really cool. I haven't done a live stream for over a year, and this seems to be going well. Famous last words. What's your favourite Radiohead song? Asks Francesco. Paranoid Android, I think. It's very difficult because In Rainbows is my favourite album. But I think Paranoid Android it has everything. And OK Computer was the album that got me into Radiohead, so it kind of has a very sweet spot in my head. Evesy asked what's an entry-level Radiohead album. I would say either OK Computer or In Rainbows. OK Computer was the album that made them 100% fully mainstream just before Kid A, when they kind of purposefully pulled themselves out of the mainstream. And In Rainbows was almost like a return to the ethos of OK Computer. Isn't Nude in 6/8? It is, and that is one of the things that makes it so beautiful. I do love Nude. I really love that song. It's an amazing song. Can of Juice asks favourite Queen song. In reality, it's Under Pressure. But what I often think of when I think of favourite songs, I think, what song could I not live without? And I think if I had to choose one Queen song, and that's the only Queen song I can ever hear again, it would have to be Bohemian Rhapsody. But at least in the current place that I'm in now in my life, I've heard that Bohemian Rhapsody enough to probably last another 5 years without hearing it. So Under Pressure for at least the next 5 years. Do you plan on making a video on Neapolitan Minor? Asks Charlie. Possibly. The Neapolitan chord, definitely at some point. Is one of those concepts which I do want to talk about, and it's very much a topic that's good people to be good people. It's good for people to know about the Neapolitan chord. That's what I'm trying to say. But it's a classical thing, right? And from a pop music perspective, it's not going to come up as much. But that said, I will do a video on that at some point. Favorite Beatles song? Asks Andre. Strawberry Fields Forever. Asim asks, do you have any certification, Trinity? So I think you're asking at least what I would call graded exams. I don't. When I first started learning piano, I was on the sort of like grade path, and I did what's called the prep exam, which is like the pre-grade 1. But before I did grade 1, I sacked off learning piano and let it gather dust for about 2 years until I returned to it self-taught. And I have considered going in and learn, and you can go in at any stage. And so I could go in and sit a grade 8 exam tomorrow if I wanted to. But I don't see why. There's not a clear reason to do so at the moment. Maybe I do it in the future as a way of stimulating like development as a musician, but I don't need the qualification. Keymaster says, Jules, you didn't ask me. Oh wait, he's talking to someone called Jules, I think. I've missed a part of the conversation. Miguel asks favorite Oasis song. Favorite Oasis song. Little by Little, I think. I really like Noel Gallagher songs. I know that he wrote most of them, but the ones that he sings as well, it makes you wonder why Liam Gallagher was in the band. I know why he's in the band, but all of my favourite Oasis songs are Noel Gallagher songs. I also really like Importance of Being Idle as well, and what's the really famous one? Don't Look Back in Anger. Luca, thank you so much for your super chat. And he has asked, could you tell me if the E in Hallelujah before the A minor in the pre-chorus is major or minor, and why? That's a good question. And that's really interesting because I've wondered that before. What he's talking about is... let's see if I get to it. And then it goes like this, the 4th, the 5th, minor 4, the major left. And then there's a chord here. Is it major or minor? I just did minor there. But E minor or E major would work really well in that spot. E minor would be the chord that's diatonic to the key because we're in C. But E major moving to A minor is a beautiful secondary dominant. I don't actually know. I think in the original Leonard Cohen version, it's a minor chord off the top of my head. But that song has been covered so much that most people are familiar with a version that's not the original. The version that I was first introduced to was the Rufus Wainwright version. And in that, he might use the major chord instead, actually. So I don't know. It's one of those things where it's becoming a bit of a folk song, that song, Hallelujah, in the sense that it's not authored by anyone anymore. We know that Leonard Cohen wrote it, but it belongs to everyone. It's not a Leonard Cohen song necessarily. Screechy's Adventure asks, what is your favourite 1968 Beatles single? What a specific question. Trying to hark my mind back to what came out in 68. That was like Magical Mystery Tour year. But what was singles? Like my favourite song off Magical Mystery Tour, apart from Strawberry Fields, because in my head that's not actually on Magical Mystery Tour because it was a single. My favourite song on that album is I Am the Walrus, which I think came out in 68, and I'm not sure if it's a single, but it's an amazing piece of music. Evie says my cat is enjoying your music. What? My cat doesn't enjoy my music. Whenever I'm playing the piano downstairs, the acoustic piano, almost guaranteed within 5 minutes the cat will come down and start meowing at me. What's his? Victor asks, how did you learn all these things about music? Initially, I was self-taught, so my knowledge was very patchy, and I learned some from my friends, and I learned some from the internet and that sort of thing. Then I studied what's called an A-level, which is like below a degree. It's what you study between the age of 16 and 18 in the UK. Then I did a degree in music, and then after that, I've worked as a professional musician for about 5 or 6 years. So, combination of education and experience. Manos Pat asks, why A minor 6 has an F sharp note since it is not in the A minor scale? That's a very common question, indeed. And it comes down to the fact that the A minor chord, when you add extensions to an A minor chord, so all you're saying is A minor with a 6 on it, there's no reason that the 6 has to be from the minor scale. The minor part of the chord is referring to the third, the minor third in the triad. What we add on top isn't affected by whether the bit at the bottom is minor or major at all. For example, if I had an A minor 7 or an A7, in both instances I have a minor 7 at the top. Doesn't affect it. Even an A7 has a minor 7 at the top. So when we have an A minor 6, we're taking an A minor chord and adding the 6th note of the scale on top. If we wanted to add the 6th note of the minor scale, that would be a flat 6. But there's an added confusion with this, because if you learnt music in a classical perspective, you might be more inclined to think of it as the way you were asking, where the 6th of A minor would be F natural. It's more of a jazz and modern thing for it to be F sharp. Just one of those stupid little rules you have to learn in chords. What have we got going on here? Oliver asks, can you play any Rolling Stone songs on piano? I can't, I'm afraid. I'd like to. I really like... She's a Rainbow is obviously a brilliant... No, I thought I might be able to pull it out of the bag, but I can't. But that's a great song. Robin asks, favourite Soccer Mummy song? I don't know which my... Yellow is the colour of her eyes. Is that one of hers? I love that. Circle the Drain is good. Your Dog. She's got loads of good songs. I also really like her cover of Wide Open Spaces, which was originally by the Dixie Chicks. Leon Webb says Sus 2 versus Sus 4 in the feeling of the sound. Sus 2, I find, doesn't feel like it even needs to resolve. Obviously, of course it could, but I could just sit there, go to another Sus 2 chord, but Sus 4, and that really does look for that resolution, because when you have a Sus 4, the fourth is only a semitone away from that third, so it's got far less distance to travel, whereas Sus 2, it would have to go up to the minor third, which you could do. But it just has longer to travel, so it's not as tense. T. Mayer asks, how long do you usually play at a gig? Depends on the type of gig. If it's a band gig with a 5-piece band or something, probably be 2 5-hour... my lord, not that long. 2 1-hour sets. I'm not Bruce Springsteen. I'm not doing 2 5-hour sets. That said, if it was a solo piano gig, I used to do 4 or 5-hour gigs where it literally was 4 or 5 hours of playing. In fact, a few years ago, I was sometimes playing a 4-hour residency, then where I basically played for 4 hours. I had like maybe a 15-minute break in there, and that was it. Then I'd get in my car, drive for an hour and a half, and play another 4-hour residency at a different restaurant. So I was literally playing for 8 solid hours. But that, I stand by, is one of the reasons I'm good at playing piano, because I just was forced to put all those hours in. What else have we got here? Play Lady Madonna, asks Pickle Hill. Can I play Lady Madonna? Let's get onto a piano sound. I'm not making any promises here. Is it there? I'm probably doing the wrong octave. What I'm thinking of in my head is the song that inspired it, which is Bad Penny Blues by Humphrey Lyttelton, because I saw that recently at a gig. That's also my excuse for not playing the rest of it. What else we got going on here? Chud Life asks, how would you go about writing a bridge for a song? I think the best way to write a bridge is to go somewhere harmonically that you've not been so far, because otherwise it will just wind up sounding like another verse or chorus. So sometimes people will actually change key for the bridge, because that really gives it a sense of a different place. So for example, Summer of 69 is in D, but then for the bridge, it goes to F. Yeah, just one idea. But generally speaking, go to a different place in the key, or even to a different key to write a bridge. High Five asks, what is your favourite video by you? By me, even. Probably songs in 5/4, because I think for that video, I just managed to get everything right. I really liked the examples, and everything just clicked and worked really well, and that has reflected in the views it's got. It's done really well, that video. It's probably the video I'm most proud of, I would say. Songs in 5/4. Evie asks, Nord, why do you pick it? I assume you mean the Nord piano. I pick it because it's probably the best digital piano you can get, particularly if you're concerned by not just acoustic sounds, but also by like e-piano sounds. What else have we got going on? Favourite Damon Albarn song project, asks Nacho something. Unfortunately, you just went off the chat. But I really like The Good, the Bad and the Queen. I don't know if you're familiar with that. That was an album that Damon Albarn did with some other people, including half of The Clash, the band The Clash. That's got some really nice songs in it. Also, The Gorillaz, Demon Days in particular. It's an amazing album. Nick Scollard asks, what is your favourite Muse album? Probably Absolution. I do also like Black Holes and Revelations quite a lot, and Origins of Symmetry. After Black Holes, when we got The Resistance, Second Law, I really stopped engaging as much. They got a bit more theatrical and dramatic. Thank you so much, Rowan, for your donation there. That's very kind of you. Lee Cornwall asks, were you classically trained? I'm not classically trained. Very much not classically trained. I can barely play any classical music, and I can't get past bar one. No, I was self-taught, and then I went. Then I effectively studied modern music. I did study classical music for a couple of years, but that was very much learning how to analyze classical music and, to a lesser extent, how to compose it, not perform it. So I've never ever really learnt how to perform classical music, and it doesn't really gel with the way I play, because I'm a very improvisational sort of person, and classical music doesn't really fit with improvisation. Manuel, thank you so much for your donation and your question here. Can you make a video about the songs of Pelo Londra? Very talented Argentinian artist. I've never heard of that, but I will check that out. Thank you so much for that. I do think in general I need to learn more about Latin American music, because at least, I don't know, maybe in America there's more exposure to it, but at least here in Britain we don't get exposed to very much Latin American music at all. I think basically the only Latin American music I've ever been exposed to without looking for it is Girl from Ipanema, Joe Beam. But even then, that's kind of a crossover hit. Daniel Navis asks, what scale can you play over a major 7 chord? Well, technically you can do anything you like, but the main thing to consider would be the 3rd and the 7th. So a scale that has a major 3rd to match the major 3rd in the major 7 chord, and a major 7th to match the major 7th in the chord. So the major scale would work. That's still a major scale, but just adding a bunch of blue notes in. Lydium. Lydium would be good. I don't generally think in terms of, here's a chord, what scales can you play on top of it? I think just, here's a chord, those are the 4 notes in that chord, so anything I do over here needs to bear that in mind. Not necessarily avoid it, like that's got a C in it, I can play a C sharp if I want, but I just need to know where to take that afterwards. You know, to sort of paraphrase Jacob Collier and many people before him, there are no wrong notes, because you just have to make sure a note can resolve somewhere. Let's choose a wrong note. Kind of wrong on its own, not when it resolves. What about, sounds pretty chunky, but not when it resolves. You know, everything can work if you make it work. Richie Poofs asks, do you like Snarky Puppy? I do. I really love Snarky Puppy, particularly Ground Up and We Like It Here and Family Dinner. That was the era of Snarky Puppy that I got massively into, and I saw them when they came to the UK. Amazing band, and a very refreshing approach to music making. R. Rizzle asks, do you think we will get a new Radiohead album this year? I really hope so. At this point, it's been 6 years since we had a Radiohead album. It feels like they're on an unofficial hiatus. I think this is the longest gap between albums. And after all, they've been together a long time now. It's a sort of period in a band's career where they would stop making original music. If you look at like the Rolling Stones, for example, they've been together this whole time, but they stopped making original music for years. But I'm very hopeful. And the thing is with Radiohead is they will just release it. They might have released it just now, because they don't do the whole hyping it up, letting you know it's coming out thing. P asks, thoughts on Taylor Swift? I think up until a couple of years ago, I thought she was a great pop artist, but not much more than that. Now, ever since she went independent and she's done Folklore, and I can't remember the name of the other one, but she released 2 albums very close together, and I'm much more interested in that style of music. It almost feels like now she has independence. She can make music which is more what she wanted to create. And I'm also a big fan of her approach to sticking it to the big major record labels by re-recording her back catalogue. That's amazing, and that is the sort of thing that will set the standards for the future in how artists and record labels interact. Bo Rock, thank you so much for your donation and your question. Can you break down Still Dre? That 2001 Dre, I actually really like that album. Well, something that's quite interesting about it is that most of it's not written by Dre. A lot of the backing tracks and beats were done by another musician, and even some of the rhymes, some of the lyrics, apparently weren't written by Dre. I don't think that takes away from the quality of the music. Of course, it's presented as if it's all about Dre and he's the master of it, so it's a bit dubious that it might not necessarily actually be his work through and through. But at some point I probably should, because I don't talk enough about hip hop. And Rowan, I'm really sorry I missed your message before. I'm just going back up to it now. Thank you again for your very generous tip you made there. Hi David from India. Your video on confusing intros, how to work on developing that skill orally or intuitively even, sorry. So do you mean in terms of how to perceive confusing intros and confusing rhythms, or how to write them? If it's how to perceive them, then the thing I was talking about in the confusing intros video is how actually when you're not presented with an obvious context, different people can hear rhythms in different ways. So sometimes you just have to find a way that works for you. So, for example, at the beginning of All Along the Watchtower by Jimi Hendrix, I genuinely hear it as a bar of 9/8 thrown in there with the bars of 4/4. I know that's not logical. I know that's probably not what Hendrix was thinking, but that's how I hear it. So when I play it, that's what I'm thinking. If you're thinking more in terms of how to write that stuff, then I would just think what a normal thing to write would be. So, for example, 4/4, and then just add in random stuff and see how it sounds. Add in a bar of 9/8, add in a bar of 15/16, and see what happens. If that didn't answer your question, let me know, and I'll see if I can shed some more light on that. T. Mayer asks, did the Beatles know they used modes? Almost certainly not. In my Did the Beatles Know Music Theory video, I talked about how Paul at least clocked that, for example, if you're in the key of D and you go to the chord A minor, he described it as going to a different world. What's really happening, at least in the context he was talking about, is we're introducing a bit of the Mixolydian mode, a bit of modal interchange. So Paul was hearing the shift in tonality, and that's the important thing. The thing he didn't know was the name of it. And ultimately, that isn't essential. It's useful, but not essential. What else we got here? Kiefer asks, favourite Coldplay album? Probably Parachutes or Rush of Blood. Yeah. I also like Viva La Vida. To be honest, they actually have got quite a lot of good albums. I quite liked Ghost Stories, even though it wasn't particularly widely regarded. But I think Parachutes or Rush of Blood are the best. Ben Credible asks, favourite Silk Sonic song? Is it called Fly Like Me? I really like that one. Fly Like Me. It kind of, what I like about it is it mixes rap with funk in a way that isn't often done. Now, people often rap over funk samples, but they don't often have a funk song with rapping, which is what I really liked about that. Lee Cornwall asks, are you pitch perfect? No, not at all. As far as I'm aware, perfect pitch is ultimately something that as an adult you can't really develop. But what I do have is I have relative pitch. So if I hear one note and then I hear another one, that's an F? Yeah. I can hear the relative space between the two. Philip Croft asks, do you listen to Red Hot Chili Peppers? I do. I really like Chili Peppers, actually. Particularly late 90s, early noughties stuff, like Californication, Can't Stop. But I also like some stuff from Blood Sugar Sex Magic. One of my favourite songs of all time is Under the Bridge. That's probably a top 20 song for me, I would say. Cindy asks, favourite band? It has to be the Beatles, I'm afraid, for that. Claire M asks, any tips for helping kids learn to love learning an instrument? When, how did you, and it's gone off screen, how did you fall in love with music? I didn't start learning music really till I was my first music lessons were when I was 11, but I didn't properly start learning until I was 14, and I think that shows a lot because that's also when I fell in love with music and I got my own MP3 player and I was buying CDs, and ultimately children can learn to play a musical instrument, no question about it, but the biggest factor in whether or not someone will actually continue learning an instrument long enough that they become a musician is that they're passionate and they have drive. And the best place to find that drive is that you actually love listening to music and you love the idea of being able to create your own music or recreate the music you love. And children don't really listen to music. They know music and they hear music, but not many children will recreationally put music on and just listen to it. They'll hear music in other environments, like on a game or on a TV show or something. But my number one way to get children to learn music, and what I've taught many children how to play music, is give them a song that they know, because then they'll know if they're playing it right when they hear it being played correctly. And that's why I really don't like graded pieces, because they're often obscure pieces of music that have been chosen purely because the publishing was cheap or free. That's not the approach to learning music that I like. I want people to learn real, quality, recognizable music, not just some piece that was written for an exam. Someone said I unsubscribed. Okay. Jeremiah asks, do you like Regina Spektor? I do. I really like Regina Spektor. And actually, I was thinking a few days ago, I wonder when she's going to release a new album. And literally yesterday, I think, she brought a new song out. I saw Regina Spektor in London a few years ago, actually. 2016, I think. And she was good. Although I think she was kind of nervous because all of the songs were rushed, which was a bit of a shame. But it was still, magical to see her because she's written some amazing songs. Artist recommendations, asks Michelle. Artist recommendations. Depends what sort of thing you like. If you don't listen to Phoebe Bridgers, listen to Phoebe Bridgers. If you want something slightly more, muso, it's techie, then perhaps Robert Glasper. He's amazing. He started as a jazz pianist and then he went into the world of hip hop. He actually released a new record a couple of days ago called Black Radio 3. The Shoes asks, what's the best Revolution? And they're referring to the Beatles' Revolutions. They have 3 versions of Revolution, the song. And the single version, the rock guitar version, for me, is the version. I'm really not a fan of Revolution 1 because it kind of feels like a less good version of the main one. And Revolution 9, it's cool, but, I'm not listening to Revolution 9 recreationally. Lucas asks, is being self-taught over or underrated? The advantage to being self-taught is that you... sorry, just looking at something. The advantage to being self-taught is that you aren't limited by when your lessons are. You can learn exactly what you want in what order you want. The big disadvantage is you don't know what you don't know. So a good teacher can look at what you're currently doing and say, oh, have you tried this? Or, oh, this is how you do the thing you're looking for. Or, oh, that thing you're doing there, that's actually, the D minor scale or something. That's the advantage of a good teacher. I think the ultimate form of learning a musical instrument would be a student who is motivated enough that they would self-teach themselves, but they also have a really good, flexible, open-minded teacher who can be there like a coach, just to guide them, not necessarily dictate what they learn. What else we got going on? Cram45 asks my favourite Killers album. Probably Hot Fuss, I think. But Sam's Town is great too. Chris Scott says, my music recommendations, the video I did a while ago about songs you should listen to. He said he loves Phoebe Bridgers, but Tame Impala left him cold. I wonder I'm interested to know which Tame Impala album you listen to. For me, if you like classic rock, like 70s rock, Tame Impala will be good for you, because he almost channels a lot of the same ideas and energies that came from kind of the proggy era of rock. But it depends. I definitely think Currents is the standout album for me with Tame Impala, closely followed by, is it Lonerism? Yeah, Lonerism. But yeah, I don't know. If you listened to The Slow Rush, which is Tame Impala's most recent album, I don't like that as much, but I do think there's some great songs in it. I think he went a little bit too dance, too much disco, perhaps. Thanisai asks your favourite time signature is 12/8. Jordan Phillips, thank you very much, Jordan, for that donation. That's very kind of you. Let me know if you have a question. The Shoes asks, should I try writing a song in a Mixolydian key? Yes, you should. Just choose a Mixolydian chord progression, for example, G, F, C, G, and see where it takes you. What's your favourite jazz standard? Asks the Raw Soul. Good question. The jazz standard I always call if I'm in a jazz jam situation is Blue Skies, just because it's the right combination of me knowing it really well and it not being the most obvious possible choice ever. It's not all the things you are, or all of me, or Cherokee, or something like that. It's still a well-known jazz standard, very much so, but it's slightly off the beaten track. Johnny H asks, what's your favourite tea? Not a massive tea fan. If I do have tea, it will be some sort of green tea. Don't really like standard tea with the milk, but I don't even really like milky coffee. I don't really like milk that much in hot drinks. DNA Anne asks, ever regret your life choice? No, actually. I'm actually really chuffed with my life choice. I remember when I first... I don't know, when I was 16 and I first, more like when I was 17 and I first decided that I wanted to be a professional musician. And when you tell people that, because when you're 17, people ask you, what do you want to do for your career? And you get very mixed responses. You get a lot of adults be like, oh yeah, but it's hard to make money in the music industry. And or hard to get a job in the music industry, isn't it? It's very competitive, which is a weird attitude because it's almost like never try. And I think, I know a lot of people who I went to university with, who studied music with me, who wanted to be musicians, and they didn't eventually wind up there because of the reasons that these judgmental adults were saying back in the day about how it's difficult. But I don't think any of them regret studying and trying music, because I don't think you can regret music. All you've done is played music, met some cool people, and had fun, and now you've wound up where you would have been anyway. So it's always worth your time, and you never know, you might wind up making it a career. Kate Marta asks, tell us about your cat. My cat is called Millie. She has had many lives before us and many names. She was once on the street and she was rescued and she was owned by somebody, and then she was owned by somebody else, and then now we have her, and one day I'm sure she'll go and have another life somewhere else. And she's probably very annoyed with me right now, but I can't hear her because I've closed the door. Paul Bartlett says the best chord is E minor 9. There's our E minor. So I assume you mean to add the 7 and the 9 there. Yeah. Oh, Colin, thank you very much for donating. Colin is one of my patrons, so he's being extra generous here by double donating. Thank you so much. It's very good to have you here. What else we got here? What university college did you go to and how did you find it? Asks GB Diamond. It's it's actually technically called a college. It's the British Institute of Modern Music, better known as BIM. And they have campuses around the UK. It's quite well known. I found out about it because of a friend of mine told me about it, who they themselves didn't even actually wind up going there, but I did. And for me, I think it suited me down to the ground. I think some people didn't get on with it as well as they could have, but it was great for me, and I have some very fond memories of being there. Claire M says, this is a brilliant Q&A. Thank you very much. How long have we been doing this now? 53 minutes. H of the Stage, hello, thank you so much. Very good to see you there. I see you a lot in my comment sections. Did you ever get round to listening to those Beatles tracks I emailed you? I was just thinking about that. I haven't. They're still on my hard drive, and I should listen to them. I really should. I think if you look at the list of video topics I've got, I've got at any given time, I've got about 50 videos that are kind of half done. But that is on the list somewhere. But thank you once again for your donation and your support. Ton Vic says, I dropped out from BIM London myself. Yeah, I don't know. When I went to BIM, they didn't have a BIM London. BIM has kind of expanded a lot. But yeah, there's no problem with dropping out either. That's the thing. Like I was saying a minute ago, if you have even a small thought of being a musician, a small aspiration of being a musician for your career, the way I see it is, if you don't at least give it a bit of a shot, at least test the waters with it, then you're probably going to spend the next 10, 20, 30 years of your life thinking about that, thinking, oh, what if? Because for a lot of people, working in the music industry doesn't suit them, but you can only find that out once you get in there and try it. And as I said before, you're not going to regret trying because it will be fun. That's why we play music. Evie says, Year of the Cat, I'll do it. Thank you very much, Evie, for that donation. That is a great song, Year of the Cat. I don't know how to play it, unfortunately. Sasha Boo Boo, thank you. I use backmasking at the introduction of Corona Man, and literally thought throughout the entire track, I'll have to try that out. And thank you for the donation. I have to check your track out. Yeah, backmasking, in case you haven't seen the latest video, is when a song contains reversed sounds, primarily voices, but also guitars, pianos, that sort of thing. Oliver says, are you a Nick Drake fan? Yes, I love Nick Drake. I have all 3 of the albums he did before he tragically died. And I think Riverman is one of my top songs of all time. And probably my top 3 song in 5/4. Take 5, 15 Step, Riverman. What degree do you have? Asked Andre. It's what it's called is a professional musicianship degree, a Bachelor of Arts in Professional Musicianship. So it's not technically a music degree. And the difference is that it's more focused on the industry, on the music industry, rather than academia. Jordan Phillips, thank you very much again, actually. Thank you. What are some foundations of more worship music? I'm trying to become a worship artist. I used to play music a lot in the church. Well, I used to go to church when I was younger, and some of my earliest experience as a musician is in the church. I was in the Church of England church, and the music in the Church of England is much inspired by classical music. So hymns, the sort of music you're playing in a church in Britain at least, are almost like simplified classical music because they've got similar chord progressions and movement, but they're limited to a short, often strophic form, just like 16 bars or 32 bars on a loop, unlike classical music where it's very expansive. You might be thinking more in terms of gospel music, which of course in America, for example, would be more typical of worship music. And what I know of gospel, I am by no means a gospel player, but in many ways it is just a different side of the blues, maybe with a few more like secondary dominants. If you want to play gospel music, actually, learn the blues scale, which is the thing I'm doing there, and also learn secondary dominants, because every chord is a secondary dominant, really, the way it moves around the key. A Piano, did you do GCSE music, and what did you think of it? I didn't actually do GCSE music, and I always regretted it at the time. Looking back, I don't know if it would have made any difference really to my career, but the thing is, because I started learning musical instruments, I first really got into playing music at the age of 14. I'd already made my GCSE choices already at that point. And I did consider switching to music, but at that point I was very new to music. I didn't feel like I really knew much about it. I didn't think I was qualified enough to do a GCSE in it. Looking back, I definitely was. I could have done it, but I didn't. And it meant that when I then did my A-level, I had to audition twice, actually, to get on to the A-level, because the requirement for the A-level was the GCSE. But I managed to audition. It was actually my guitar audition that got me in, not my piano audition, because I auditioned on piano. And granted, I didn't really prepare a piece. I just kind of went and jammed around a bit. And I think they were concerned that I wouldn't be able to pass the performance modules. So they gave me a grade 5 guitar book. I came back, performed a grade 5 guitar piece, and they said, cool, let's do it. Latino asks, Lantino asks, what's your top 3 movie franchises? Interesting. Number 1, Star Wars. I love Star Wars. Even the new films, the sequel trilogy, I find them very disappointing, and yet I saw them multiple times in the cinema. That's my relationship with Star Wars. It's like a disappointed parent who still unconditionally loves their child, even when they're ruining everything. Also, Back to the Future. I absolutely love Back to the Future. And a third franchise, I don't know. Is there a third franchise? I like Harry Potter a lot. Harry Potter is some of my favourite films, actually. They're very, very well put together films. Fantastic story. Classics, really. A Piano says, I'm doing GCSE music, and I thought I was underqualified as well. I think that's the thing with GCSEs. With GCSEs, you're not really expected to know much going into them, because it's kind of the first time you've ever got to choose your qualification. But it's funny when you learn music in a college or school environment, because obviously some kids have been learning music from a young age, because they've had private lessons. And then other kids are coming in on the ground floor. So you sometimes have a massive disparity in abilities, and it must be very hard for people to teach music. I know one of my friends, he used to teach GCSE music, and it was difficult because you'd have two children in the class who really were above and beyond it. You'd have a few who were at the right level, and you have a whole bunch of others who were well below what was realistically what they wanted from the class. But it's the problem with music education. It's not very standardized and not very consistent. Thank you so much, Marco Turner, for that generous donation. That's very kind of you. Christian Parser asks, what's the tattoo on your arm? Can you see that? The chat box is in my way on. There we are. It's a bear. A bear. Roch Rich says, me, an idiot, got a B in GCSE music. Well, it's more than I've got. Ali Passer asks, thoughts on Rage Against the Machine. I think they're amazing. I think they're fantastic. They're the best music to listen to when you're driving home at night on a motorway at 2 a.m. and you're trying to stay awake. Particularly as Rage Against the Machine definitely sound better loud. Yeah, they're one of my favourite rock bands of all time, I would say. Do you bear arms? Not here. Danny M. Thoughts on Dodie? She has great harmonies in all of her songs and is pretty chill, like a soft Jacob Collier. Yeah, I think Dodie's great. I've watched Dodie's videos for years because she's been on YouTube for years. I remember watching her videos 10 years ago. And she's gone on an amazing career from that. She's, currently, I think she's currently touring the US off the back of her album. Her album got top 10 in the UK, I think, or it might have even got top 5. She's brilliant, and she's got some great songs. And she's definitely got a style as well, which is great, because so many artists don't have that style where you instantly hear and you think, oh, that's so-and-so. A Dodie song, largely thanks to the harmonies that you're talking about, is almost instantly recognisable. Any chance of talking about Supertramp? Asks Julian. Supertramp are great. Dreamer is an excellent song. The Logical song is a brilliant song. One of my favourite songs, actually. Logical song, I would say. Breakfast in America. They've got other good ones. I need to learn Logical song, actually, because that's got a great keyboard part. And I should talk about them in a video, actually. You're right. Ono D. Jean asks, thoughts on Pink Floyd and Genesis. I think they're both excellent. Pink Floyd, I love Dark Side of the Moon. And then beyond Dark Side of the Moon, there are tracks on every album which I like, but no, Dark Side of the Moon is the pinnacle for me. Genesis, they've got some amazing songs. Follow Me, Follow You, that's a great song. Land of Confusion. Genesis are one of those examples of a band who somehow managed to make very, very complicated music into pop hits. I don't know how they did that, but they did a really good job at it. And you don't really get artists like that in the charts at the moment. It's very rare now, and for the last 20 years, in the charts to find anything that's not just in 4/4 or, if you're lucky, 6/8. But Genesis, they'd have something like a verse in 11/4, and then the chorus would go into 4/4, and then there'd be a little bit of 6/4 later on. And no one cared about it. It still sold. Hello Goodbye says, thoughts on Sex Pistols. They're one of those bands who are more important for the cultural impact they had than the music they made. They only made one album, and some of it's good. Anarchy in the UK is a good song. God Bless the Queen is not God Bless the Queen. God Save the Queen. What's it called? I can't remember. This is how important Sex Pistols are. I can't even remember the name of their most important song. But Johnny Rotten is an icon, at least here in Britain. But yeah, they made one album. That's all they had to make. They didn't need any more. They came, they shook everything up, offended a bunch of people in a good way, got banned off the BBC, and then got made into legends. All of the mainstream music is about thought control. I think all mainstream music is just about, sex, drugs, and violence, isn't it? Which I guess in turn is thought control. Music theory behind making a song sounds ghostly and haunted, says Harrison Bout. Are you asking what music theory could make a song sound ghostly and haunted? Diminished chords, I guess. If I go on a piano sound here. Sounds a bit cartoon, but that's just a diminished chord going up the piano. Instantly sounds kind of scary. It's kind of melodramatic, but diminished chords will always sound a bit spooky. Brian Cunningham asks, do you like Nirvana? Yes, I love Nirvana. Nevermind is a classic album, absolutely classic. And I also like, I like all sorts of their music. I can't remember the name of the album, the one that Heart-Shaped Box is on. That's a good track. And I also really like their MTV Unplugged. That's a great performance. What else we got? On a Friday or Radiohead? On a Friday. Ben Fox asks, what's your favourite chord? I don't know completely. Nah. Oh, actually, got it. That. Which is a D diminished 7 add 9. Yeah. D diminished 7 add 9. Well, I guess you could just call it a D diminished 9, probably. It gets weird with diminished chords. Naming them gets confusing. Sounds pretty trash on its own, but not when you resolve it somewhere. It sounds very sweet and nostalgic. What's your favourite Beatle? George Martin. Are you in a band? Asks Ode to Sound. Until very recently, and still technically now, I have been for the last 10 years, have been in a function band, in a wedding band, which has been a big part of my career for a long time. But sadly, recently, I have decided to step back from that. I tried juggling it with YouTube, and it kind of didn't work. It gets too demanding. But I am sad to be leaving that because it's been a big part of my life. Jordan John Yates says, know any Jamiroquai? Not how to play it, but Jamiroquai are great. And they've certainly written some of the most interesting pop songs of the last 20 years. Virtual Insanity is right. It's a brilliant song. Cinnabar 555 asks, do you smoke? I don't smoke, no. What have we got? Any other questions? What's the music theory behind making a game over jingle? Asks Harrison Bell. I guess you mean like the little sound you might get at the end of a game if you die or something, like Mario. I think just a descending thing that goes. A descending thing that sounds dissonant and then resolves at the end, maybe. And kind of sounds a little bit miserable. Lucas asks, how do you write melodies? I sort of choose I'll have a chord progression and I'll know in my head what scale I want to go with that. So in here, I'm in a kind of jazzy place here. So I'm going to go with the C major scale. I'm doing D minor, G, C. And I'll largely be focusing on the scale, but I won't be afraid to add in other notes from beyond the scale. Start with a phrase. Then the next phrase phrase should sound related but different. So it went up and said. Maybe the first phrase again. You shouldn't have a formula when you write a melody, because otherwise all your melodies would just sound the same, but you can have a general vibe of the direction you should go in. And I think the most important thing with a melody is if you just do random stuff, it won't sound melodic because it has no repetition in it. On the flip side, if you just keep repeating the same thing, it would just start sounding really boring. You've got to find a place in the middle where it's got repetition, but every now and then something changes a little bit. Emmanuel asks, best album in 2022 so far. I'm trying to scan my mind for albums that have come out so far. I was listening to Black Radio 3 earlier, which is a new album by Robert Glasper, but I've not really got through it yet. But that is it was sounding great. What else has come out this year so far? I can't think. If you can suggest any albums that have come out this year, then let me know, because then I'll cast my opinion on them. Valentin asks, you're looking forward to the new Elvis biopic. I didn't know there was an Elvis biopic. That does sound really cool. Hopefully it will be good. I think the thing is with biopics is we've recently had Bohemian Rhapsody, Rocket Man, 2 very well received biopics, but across history there's been loads of biopics that we just kind of forget about because they're not so good. It can be dangerous making a biopic, because if you misrepresent or the person in question, or if you don't really do it justice, no one likes it, because it has to be in the spirit, doesn't it? It has to be becoming of the artist. Thoughts on Fiona Apple, asks Genesis. I think she's great. I think her recent album, Fetch the Bolt Cutters, is an excellent album. And she has some other great songs as well. Quite a lot of good songs, actually. She's a great combination of new ideas, but not so out there that it's like just jarring. It's a good blend of good old-fashioned bluesy piano writing and some pretty interesting ideas on top. Can you do a video about odd time signatures? Asks Ono. I kind of have, but I kind of haven't. So I've done one on 5/4. I've done one on 5/4. I've done one on 7/4. 6/4 if you count that. I am planning a video soon on songs that change time signature, songs that start in one time signature and then move to another. But yeah, in time will try and do pretty much every time signature I can. I've started with the obvious ones, like 5/4, 7/4. In time, I'll probably do some of the less obvious ones. Kate McKinney asks, how's your violin study going? I actually recorded a little bit earlier for my video diary. I'm for those who don't know, I'm making a video diary tracking my progress learning the violin. To give you an idea of how it's going, I started in January 2021 with the forecast that it would be a year's project, and after the year I would make a video, put it out, that's it. A year has now passed. What happened is I kind of trailed off with practicing. I was off to a good start, then I slowed down, then I had another resurgence and I slowed down. And it came to a year since the beginning of the project. I felt like I didn't want to make the video yet because I hadn't made enough progress. So my plan at the moment is around September this year, I'm going to put that video out, which means I would have been learning violin for about 18 months. See how it goes. I'm kind of nervous about that, but deadlines are good sometimes. Adam says I'm learning violin too. What are you self-teaching? Have you got a teacher? I'm self-teaching and I'm not sure how good of an idea that is. I have had a lesson or two though with someone, and they have been very useful. Is there really a dark side of the moon? Asks Pulsar. Yes, there is, actually. And the dark side... no, I'm not a scientist. I couldn't even think of the proper term to describe what I'm about to say. But as far as I'm aware, the moon is in a particular type of orbit locked with the Earth that we always see the same side of the moon, which means there is a dark side of the moon that we don't see. And I'm sure Pink Floyd are there playing a gig right now. $1 million subs, you have to play Paganini, God Save the Queen. Is that God Save the Queen in the style of Paganini, or is that Paganini and God Save the Queen at the same time? Danny Caputi asks, music of Les Mis would be great to incorporate into your videos. Contains a lot of examples of many things you discuss. That's a good point. In fact, I'm doing a video soon on songs that use counterpoint. And musicals like Les Mis are a great example of counterpoint in more contemporary music, because often it's a great way of having different characters sing their line, their dialogue at the same time, but not have one dominate, kind of have them weave in with each other, which is really clever when done well. Jack says tidally locked. I believe you're correct. I can't confirm that. Tidally locked, I think he's saying that's what the moon is with the Earth. That Cinnabar, I have a confirmation from Cinnabar that is what that is. And Dave has confirmed what we've all been wondering: the moon does not orbit around itself. Other than Strawberry Fields, what is your favourite Beatles song? Asks Elliot. Hey Bulldog. For many years, I said Hey Bulldog was my favourite. And eventually I decided to change my mind to Strawberry Fields. But Hey Bulldog, it has a very warm place in my heart because it was sort of the song that got me into the Beatles way back when I was younger. Jennifer Stokes asks, what weird instrument would you love to master? Good question. I don't know. Maybe it's not particularly weird, but maybe the pipe organ. Obviously, top half of the pipe organ I've got sorted, but it's the pedals. I don't know if you've ever seen someone pedal on the organ, but it's a whole other part of your brain you've got to carve out to do that. I wouldn't know where to start. It would be like learning to play again. Lady Madonna or Radio Gaga, asks A Piano. Radio Gaga is one of my favourite songs, so Radio Gaga. Lady Madonna I do like, but it's probably not in my top 100 Beatles songs. It's fun, but it's not really my sort of song. Ode to Sound, thoughts on Weezer. I think Weezer are great. I think the Blue Album of theirs is excellent. Islands in the Sun, the Sweater Song, Buddy Holly. They've got loads of good songs. Beverly Hills actually was the first song I ever heard of theirs, and that's a great song. Yeah, Weezer are great. Peanut Butter Butt asks, can you play the drums? Not really, but I'd love to learn more. I've jammed around loads of times on drums, and I actually blagged playing drums on a concert once. Years ago. I was just like, literally just the entire gig, eighth notes on the ride, kick on the 1, snare on the 3, that was it. So I can play that if you want. Cinema asks, Let It Be or The Long and Winding Road? Let It Be. Let It Be, I think. Let It Be is one of those songs which is such a classic that sometimes you feel like you've heard it too much, but actually, if you listen to the words Let It Be and sort of the mood, when that chorus comes in Let It Be, and the Beatles come in with their BVs, and Paul basically just says Let It Be on a loop, it just is a perfect sort of musical hug. Steve MD says, Adam Lilly gone full woke, won't go there anymore. I don't know if he's gone full woke. Yeah, it's music theory at the end of the day. It's not flat earth vaccines or whatever. Somebody said Adam Neely riff. I now have to pay a royalty to Adam for that. What makes Never Gonna Give You Up so catchy? Can I play that? No, I can't apparently. Well, that was a shambles of a version. But what makes it catchy? The melody in the chorus is kind of the same idea stretched out. And I think it's just catchy because of Rickrolling. I think, in my opinion, I think it's an awful song. And it's kind of an abomination of a pop song. But it has that cheese and sort of novelty value, which makes it entertaining. Jamie Henderson says, learning piano with grades or no grades. I didn't learn with grades. As I was saying earlier in the stream, when you learn with grades, you're very much boxed in to the curriculum. You have to learn the curriculum. I've taught some students grades before, and what happens is you spend 9 months practicing 3 pieces of music, and I don't think that's very motivating. The advantage, of course, with grades is you do get a recognised qualification, and of course you do learn stuff with grades. But personally, no one learns music to jump through hoops. They learn music because they love music. They want to make music. So unless you're doing something very academic where you do need the grades to progress, perhaps you're applying for some sort of musical course where you need a particular grade, I would say you don't need grades. Silabar asks, what makes minor sad? I don't know. I personally don't think minor is sad. I would say it's serious. If I had to choose an emotion or a mood, I'd say serious. Sounds like something dramatic and serious is going to happen. Not sad necessarily. What's the reason of the F sharp diminished on Till There Was You? Asks Max. I know this song, you're referring to that song the Beatles did, which I think is actually a cover. It's originally written by someone else. I can't think of the context, unfortunately. I guess I'd say it's almost all diminished chords are there to provide a point of tension that can then be resolved somewhere. And they can be resolved in all sorts of places. Sargento asks, can you talk about how to make key changes in a way that it sounds natural and that it makes sense? The easiest way to do that is to pivot between the 2 chords. 2 keys, even. And it's even easier to do that when those 2 keys are close to each other. So let me explain that. So pivot means to use a chord that kind of makes sense in both the current key and the destination key. And 2 keys that are related to each other would be keys that share almost all the same notes, but maybe one is different. So, for example, C has no black notes, it's all white notes. And the key of F has 1 black note, it has B flat. So they're closely related because they almost share all of the same notes. So if we're in C, definitely in C. Now I've played a G minor chord. And now I'm in the key of F. So what happened there is, when I played the G minor chord, it worked as a pivot chord. It worked as a bridge between the 2 keys because G minor has a B flat in it. So when you introduce the note B flat to the key of C, you're now in F, because the only difference between C and F is the B. So that was the pivot, and then once I was on the G minor, I hit it home with a 5, 1, C, F. perfect cadence, which is a great way to ground where your new key center is. That's how you change key. Is this stream going to be saved? Asks Mikhail. I hope so. I'm actually using OBS, which is a streaming piece of software, for the first time, and I'm not completely sure how it works. So there's a chance that when I finish a stream, it's going to disappear into the ether. I don't know. But hopefully it will be on the channel after the point of me performing it, so people can go back and see it if they want to. Ono asks, do you have tips for educational YouTube channels? I don't know if you mean tips for channels in general or tips for how to start your own. I'd say a good tip is if you're making a statement of something that you're suggesting is a fact, then have a source in the description or even on the screen. Because a lot of channels that are great, for example, Real Life Law, that's an educational YouTube channel. They're great, really are great. But I remember once they showed this graph on screen, which was kind of the crux of their argument. They were looking at the graph and saying, look, this is why A is B or whatever. They didn't have a source for the graph even on the screen or in the description. So how are we meant to know where that information came from? We have to now trust you that you have sourced it from somewhere reliable. Of course, they probably have sourced it from somewhere reliable, but if so, just put the source in the description, because then it clears up any uncertainty with that. Do you personally write songs? Asks Anonymous. I do. I first got into music writing songs. That was sort of my first love in music, was songwriting. Then I fell out of love with it. Mainly because I wrote a bunch of songs, did an album, did the whole trying to be a songwriter thing. Didn't work out for me. Then I became more of a piano player, a session player, a function player, focused on making some money. And then in recent years, I've come back to songwriting. And actually, later this year, I'm planning on releasing, but I was previously going to release an EP. Now I've written so many songs for it, it's kind of turning into an album. But hopefully by the end of this year, there will be a set of my original songs available to listen to, which will be fun. What else we got going here? Oh, Alan DB asks, do you are familiar with Siberian Breaks by MGMT? I would say that's probably one of my absolute favourite MGMT songs. It's a really great piece of music. Really sort of proggy, which is, I think it's only beaten out by, I don't know, The Youth or Electric Feel. I have a real sweet spot for MGMT's first album, but MGMT's second album, I would say Siberian Breaks is my favourite song off that album. Great piece of music. Victor Palafox asks, what band do you think is overrated? That's a difficult one. There's probably a bunch of examples that aren't coming to mind. Two that kind of come to mind, and they're actually kind of similar. And I'm sure some people are about to get offended. The Rolling Stones are great. They are great. They've got about 20 Stone Cold classics. But then people compare them to the Beatles, or even Led Zeppelin. And the thing is, the Beatles and Led Zeppelin and bands like that were real innovators. They really pushed music forward. Whereas Rolling Stones largely were just playing Americana, doing really good versions of R&B music, but they weren't the same level of innovation. So I'm not saying that the Stones don't deserve their rating as one of the greatest bands of all time, but they might be slightly overrated because they're often put on God tier, when I would say they're sort of demigod tier. And another band like that is Oasis. Similar situation, where Oasis are considered one of the best bands in the 90s. They're great, but if you compare them to Blur, maybe not as interesting. Oasis kind of wrote... The thing is with Oasis is they wrote 3 really good songs, and then they rewrote those 3 really good songs about 7 times. So their music is great, but can often be quite samey. They kind of got the formula down and ran with it. All right. I'm probably going to keep going with this live stream for about 10 minutes more. and then I'm going to wrap it up because it's getting a bit late here. It's 10 o'clock in the UK now. But I can see that DC disagrees with me. Stones are greater than Zeppelin. I'm afraid I can't agree with that. But Stones are good. What's a popular genre that you can't stand? Asks Biological Stepdad. That's a good username. I don't know if I'd call that genre, but Kanye West. Kanye West is a good artist who is overrated. He's not a band, of course, but I can't get into Kanye West. He has a handful of songs which I think are really good, and in general, I think he's a cool artist. But people often put him up there as like one of the most innovative artists of the 21st century, and I don't really get that. I don't really understand why he's put on that tier. Drawtastic Art asks, what do you rate the song Exit Music for a Film from 1 to 10? Eight, maybe 9. It's one of my favourite songs from OK Computer, I'd say, actually. Stefan asks, do you like punk and emo music? I really like pop punk. When I was younger, much like a lot of my contemporaries, My Chemical Romance were one of my favourite bands. Don't listen to them as much now, but they have got a sweet spot in my heart. And pop punk, Green Day, I love Green Day. I saw them live. Blink. Just like pop punk in general is a great sound. If you're talking more in old school punk, like 70s punk, I do like that too. Maybe not as much, but I do like the Ramones, the Clash. Also, recently there's a band in the UK called Idols. They're a punk band who some of their stuff is just a bit too punky for me, but some of it is really good. Ger Schulman asks, how can I get the self-confidence to sing? I think that's a really good question because as a musician, being confident enough to sing in front of other musicians is really valuable, even if you don't intend on singing on stage, because singing is a great way to convey ideas quickly. And it's the same with anything. If you want to get confident at it, you just got to start doing it. Build up from the ground up. So start by singing to someone that you feel very comfortable with, maybe a family member or a friend. Then to a few more friends, a few more. Then if you're feeling brave, go do open mic night or something. Build it from the ground up. And you won't regret it. You won't. It's a very valuable skill to be able to sing at least proficiently enough to communicate a melody or an idea. Rhea C asks, thoughts on the Beatles breakup? It's one of those things. You think if the Beatles had stayed together a bit longer, what more would they have done? And you can kind of get a vibe of what they would have done by looking at the Beatles solo albums that they did immediately after. Because a lot of the songs that are on the early solo albums of Paul, John and George were songs that were workshopped by the Beatles and would have inevitably become Beatles songs. I don't know, because particularly with Paul McCartney, I feel like his songwriting standard really diminished after the Beatles. I think because something that made Paul great was having George Martin, John Lennon, and to a lesser extent George Harrison and Ringo in the room to sort of mould and shape his ideas. Because once he didn't have them pulling him away from a particular niche, Paul kind of went full on, I don't know the best word for it, cheesy? Don't get me wrong, I love some Paul McCartney tracks, some solo tracks, but he had a tendency for cheese. John Lennon was kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. He had a tendency for very serious, edgy music, and they kind of blended really nicely by meeting in the middle. Well, Chris Scott, what you're saying there. So Chris Scott said, agreed, Lennon carried McCartney. I think it's completely symbiotic because actually the old joke is that McCartney wrote all of the hit singles. He bankrolled the band. So in that respect, he allowed the financial stability for John to then do his really experimental stuff and not have to worry about selling records. Particularly once you get past 1964 and you get into the more edgy, advanced stuff with the Beatles. I think there's I can't remember where it was, but there's a quote from John Lennon saying about how every time someone covers a Beatles song, they're covering a McCartney song, because they were just sort of more traditional in form and more accessible, perhaps. Silly Love Songs is a perfect example of a cheesy McCartney song. Thank you, Luton92. I think a perfect example of John versus Paul, I think, is their Christmas songs. So, John Lennon writes War Is Over as his Christmas song. An amazing piece of music. Like musically, it's in 3/4. It goes through 3 different key centers. But more importantly, from a lyrical and thematic point of view, it's about war being over, about togetherness, about family. Paul McCartney's one, Wonderful Christmas Time, is kind of a silly, cheesy, synthy song that, you know, that doesn't do much for me. And that's the John versus Paul, right? That's the cheese versus the serious. Nicola says, thoughts on The Weeknd. I think The Weeknd is one of my favourite popular music artists working right now. I don't necessarily like everything he's written, but if you wrote a list of my 10 favourite sort of Billboard chart hits of the last 10 years, The Weeknd would appear in that list probably at least 4 times. Feel It Coming, which he did with Daft Punk, is an amazing song. I Can't Feel My Face, excellent song. Blinding Lights, brilliant song. Save Your Tears. He's a great artist. Joshua Mills, thank you for your question and your donation. He asks, well, it's disappearing. I've got it back now. Thoughts on guitarists such as Steve Howe, John Petrucci, Alex Lifeson, progressive rock bands in general. To be honest, it's a bit of a blind spot for me, as you could probably tell from the lack of ability to pronounce those names. You know, prog is a true rabbit hole of a genre. And for me, when I look at prog, I think more about keyboard players, like Rick Wakeman, Keith Emerson. So for some reason, I'm forgetting everything. But yeah, I should investigate those artists more, sort of prog guitar world. I'll check them out. Thank you for your question. Okay, let's answer 3 more questions. Darkman asks, speaking of overrated, Daft Punk. Not at all. I think Daft Punk are one of the best artists of the last 20 years. I think Discovery is one of my favourite albums. Random Access Memories has some great songs on it. I think they're really, really good band, and really original. You know, when we look at classic artists, one of the biggest measures of whether an artist is a classic artist or not is whether they innovated, whether they created music which didn't sound like the music that came before it. And Daft Punk did that. Of course, they drew heavily from funk, from disco, from electronic, but they did a new thing with it, and they took it to a new place, which has been heavily inspirational on modern music. So yeah, I think they're great. Nino Basnatic asks, best Hendrix track. I think my favourite Hendrix song is All Along the Watchtower. Of course, he didn't write that, but it's an amazing version and probably the best cover version of any song ever when you compare the original to the cover. But I also really like Castles Made of Sand. That's a beautiful song. He's got loads of great songs. I think people don't talk enough about Hendrix's songwriting. I think he has so many good songs that he wrote. Of course, amazing guitarist, complete innovator, but also wrote some great songs, and he's a great singer as well. Cinnabar55 asks, will there ever be a popular song in Locrian? Closest thing we had, if you've probably seen my video, is Army of Me by Björk. which is 66% Locrian, because the chorus isn't really Locrian. And it is a popular song, because I think it got to number 10 in the UK, which I would say means it's popular. Little Pulsar Lights has just said Little Wing. That is an amazing song. Little Wing, the problem with Little Wing is it's too short. They could have played Little Wing twice and it still wouldn't have been too long. I think it's only like 2 minutes long or less. So absolute crime that song isn't longer. And I'm going to answer one more question and then play some sort of piano and then go. Rick has said, "Let It Be," Yesterday, Long and Winding Road, not too cheesy, beautiful melodies. And I agree. I think, but all three of those songs are examples of where Paul was about to write a cheesy song and another Beatle, probably John, just pulled it slightly in another direction. I also think George Martin did some of that pulling as well. And I think the only song Paul wrote after the Beatles that didn't go anywhere near Cheeseland is Maybe I'm Amazed, which he had probably already written during the Beatles' time because it came out so quick after the Beatles. That wasn't really a question, but can I play Long and Winding Road? Yeah, okay. We're going to finish with me playing The Long and Winding Road, which is almost definitely going to demonetize this, but screw it, it's fine. It's worth it for the Beatles. Let's do it on the whirly. Thank you so much for watching, guys. It's been really fun. I'll have to do this again at some point. And the technology has all worked. Normally when I do live streams, things crash and die and destroy themselves, but it's worked. Although I say that, I'll probably find out that this, the whole thing's just been in black and white upside down or something. Anyway, this is The Long and Winding Road. It's not, because I can't remember how to play it. There it is. Thank you so much for watching. And we'll do this again sometime.